About 48 states in the District of Columbia report shortages of special education teachers. 42 states also report a shortage of early intervention providers. On top of that, special education teachers leave the profession at nearly twice the rate of general education teachers, and enrollment in teacher preparation programs has gone down by a lot, around 35% over the last 5 years. This also leads to issues in equity. About 90% of high poverty school districts report difficulty in attracting qualified special education teachers. There are severe and persistent shortages of special educators from diverse backgrounds, and this disproportionately affects students with serious and emotional and behavioral disorders. And so the challenge with this is that districts are often left with few choices and often rely on fast track or emergency certified teachers with little preparation, and a lot of times they don't have any experience in the classroom prior to beginning their roles as educators. You can't solely rely on short-term solutions, as they alone would exacerbate quantity and quality issues and create a revolving door within the teacher pipeline. And on the other hand, long-term solutions like policy change take a lot of time.
So we understand that we need a comprehensive educator talent management framework that encompasses the entire educator career continuum, considers unique local contexts, and clarifies partner roles. We need a systematic and systemic approach to addressing special education teacher shortages specific to local context that does not compromise quality through the creation of a strong network and partnerships that establish shared ownership, collective action, and joint accountability. We need an approach that focuses on attracting, preparing, and retaining teachers. It is with this understanding that we developed the Educator Shortages in Special Education Toolkit. This toolkit is the result of a collaborative effort between the Center on Great Teachers and Leaders and the CEEDAR Center. It was funded in part by the Office of Special Education Programs at the U.S. Department of Education, aligned with their current efforts. The process intentionally examines shortages across the entire career continuum, from attracting to preparing to retaining teachers, so that all students with disabilities have access to effective teachers. The toolkit is organized around the guiding principle that short-term strategies to meet immediate demand must be intentionally paired with long-term systemic strategies to attract, prepare, and retain effective special education teachers to create comprehensive shortage solutions. The toolkit is organized around a facilitator's guide and 3 supporting sets of tools. If it's your first visit, we recommend starting with the facilitator's guide, which I will share with you first. To access the toolkit, you can go to gtlcenter.org. From there, navigate to the Technical Assistance tab at the top of the page, and then click Toolkits from the drop-down menu. To reinforce the importance of systemic strategies to address the complex problem of shortages, Facilitator's Guide is based on the following principles. First, shortages are a local issue. Although national and state-level shortage data provide valuable information, the data often obscures patterns in shortages at the district and school levels that directly affect students' access to effective teachers. Addressing special education teacher shortages requires strategies that directly respond to local needs and contexts. Shortages are an equity issue. Shortages do not impact all localities and populations of students in the same way. A focus on improving shortages in the aggregate often overlooks the populations of students who are most in need of effective instruction. Improving equitable access to effective special education teachers means addressing teacher shortages at the local level for the highest need populations of students. Shortages can impact any stage of the career continuum. For example, shortages can result from attracting or preparing too few teachers. Shortages also can result from high rates of teacher attrition. Understanding the points on the career continuum at which shortages develop, expand, or contract is essential for selecting strategies that will address the root causes of shortages. And finally, shortages require collaboration across partners at all stages of the career continuum. This toolkit is organized around the Facilitator's Guide. The Facilitator's Guide is designed to lead state teams through a collaborative process in developing a comprehensive approach for addressing shortages through the combination of short and long-term educator talent management strategies. This guide helps teams identify and implement a combination of short and long-term strategies that address local contexts and needs. It's written for leaders and facilitators of state teams charged with developing the comprehensive approach for addressing local shortages. State teams should promote shared ownership, collective action, and joint accountability across the following partners: state education agency personnel responsible for statewide educator talent management systems data and monitoring systems, and educator preparation and accountability systems. Regional education agency personnel responsible for building capacity across districts and regions within states. Local education agency or district personnel responsible for attracting, developing, and retaining effective special education teachers, including instructional leaders and human resources personnel, and educator preparation program personnel, including both traditional and alternative routes, responsible for preparing new special education teachers. The Facilitator's Guide is organized around the guiding principle that comprehensive shortage solutions require short-term strategies to address the immediate demand, coupled with long-term systemic strategies to ultimately strengthen the educator workforce. So for this reason, during phase 1, assess, plan, and prepare, teams concurrently identify short-term strategies to fill vacancies while engaging in the data-driven process to examine and address the systemic root causes of shortages. This table shows how the Facilitator's Guide leads teams through this concurrent process to examine both the short-term and long-term strategies that can be jointly implemented, sustained, and scaled. To identify long-term strategies, states can use the toolkit to explore context for national, state, and local special education teacher shortages, analyze data across state, regional, local, and ed prep program partners, identify root causes of local shortages, and select strategies to strengthen educator talent management systems.
CEEDAR partners with many states to build the capacity of personal preparation systems. Today, we're joined by 2 of our partnering states to talk a little bit about how they have implemented the toolkit.
Teach Camp is a 3-day professional experience for beginning special education teachers with follow-up sessions all throughout the year. The goal is to increase special education teacher retention, and the theme is to survive and thrive. Besides sessions on facilitated IEPs, how to collaborate with general education teachers, working with paraprofessionals and parents, we focus on teacher self-care, wellness, connection, mindfulness, hydration, and other self-care practices. We want special education teachers to feel supported and connect to their professional network with the Arizona Department of Education Exceptional Student Services and the Arizona CEC case. At Teach Camp, we even had one Arizona CEC member and one camper discover that they had been teacher and student in years past. Out of the campers we surveyed, 100% said they would recommend Teach Camp to their friend or colleague. 99% said they were going to return to the teaching profession, and only 1% was undecided. So just a few quotes from our campers. The abundance of information from the Arizona Department of Education was amazing. It made me feel I'm not alone. Everyone's energy, approachability, and willingness to help was amazing. I am also eager to talk about the Teacher Empowerment Project. This project showcases the power of collective collaboration and community among special education directors. Made up of 4 districts in Southern Arizona, this community of practice has been meeting since fall 2019. This group has focused on special education teacher recruitment and retention, and the theme of self-care for themselves and their teachers has been a thread that has carried over from Teach Camp. All of these directors had special education teachers who attended Teach Camp, and in fact, this is in part how they were selected for this project. We surveyed the teachers in these districts who had attended Teach Camp to find out from them what it was they felt they needed, and we did design some webinars. What we also found was that the special education directors really wanted the time together, so we developed these monthly virtual meetings to discuss their local recruitment and retention issues collectively. This pilot project has been really informative in how important it is to spend time together first as a team. We've been together for over a year and have now collectively developed a survey together as a team that these special education directors will distribute to all of their special education teachers in their district. This survey continues on with the theme of self-care and feelings of teacher self-efficacy and preparedness to make a difference in the lives of their students. The survey goes out in mid-March and will be open for 1 month until mid-April. From there, we already have a meeting on the calendar to meet with Arizona CEC case to talk about professional learning that can be developed based on the data that the directors in the Teacher Empowerment Project collected from their teachers. I did just want to talk about the collaboration between the CEEDAR Center, the Arizona CEEDAR. We've renamed ourselves the Arizona Coalition for Educator Preparation and Practice. Just having the active participation on our CEEDAR Shortages topical action group, those resources and rich discussions that we have. What has been invaluable is that we do have representation from colleges and universities, the Arizona Department of Education, the Arizona State School for the Deaf and the Blind, and the local education agencies. One of our special education administrators administrators from the Teacher Empowerment Project is on the Shortages Topical Action Group with us. Also, we just continue to provide updates to our CEEDAR States Steering Committee and receive feedback from them as we continue to think about the recruitment and retention of special education teachers at the local level. And we are just really excited to continue this work with the resources and supports from CEEDAR.
I think it's important to set the quick background that my governor and state superintendent had a phenomenal opportunity to hit the ground, go throughout the regions of Georgia, and really hear from the public what was working with special education. And so always with those opportunities, you're going to hear what's working and you're going to hear what those opportunities are. And so loudly and clearly, we heard concerns about teacher retention. We heard concerns about teacher shortage, and more specifically, we heard it about special education. And so of course, the charge was given to me. There's a teacher shortage for special education. What are you going to do about it? And we worked together to change that dynamic of what are we going to do about it. While there is definitely a disproportionate attempt to address special education, it's really a microcosm of what's happening with the teacher pipeline for all teachers. And so we began to build the momentum for Team Georgia. That was not the Department of Education. It was all things being who cared about this topic. And if you have ever been a part of Leading by Convening, you recognize that conversation. And we recognized that we all cared about it. Higher Ed cared about it. The Professional Standards Commission cared about it. Board of Regents cared about it. Of course, Department of Education cared about it. The local Board of Ed cared about it. And although we all cared about the exact same thing, we probably had never had the opportunity to sit together and talk about the why, talk about the data and how and what we needed to do differently. And so we created the Georgia Teacher Summit, and we were so excited that the toolkit was out there, because knowing that we did not have to recreate the wheel. We did not have to focus our energy on trying to create a process. We focused our energy on trying to get the right people to the table. So that was the beginning. And so here are some broad objectives that we worked on from the Teacher Pipeline Summit. And I wish I could tell you today that everything is perfect, but it's not. But we're in such a better place today than we were last year this time. And I'll just be really candid with you. It's bigger than just using the toolkit. For us, it was the process. So we thought about the process that you would use, understanding your why, as an example, dealing with the data, and then also answering the tough questions about your root cause long before you got to the point where you're selecting short-term and long-term. And so probably with that teacher summit, we recognized we were not ready to go through that entire process. Now, while obviously teacher retention and shortage is an issue and we have to put some pieces in place, we were not ready to go through that entire process. So we dealt with just the first two components. We focused on, do we have common language and common understanding about why this is important? And do we have the right data to lead us down a process of answering the questions? And so we actually took the toolkit with the permission of the organization and we Georgiaized it. And we figured out that there was no one entity who could answer all the questions. And so we divvied up the questions and we said, if you are an education preparation program, this is the version of the toolkit for you. Tell us what you know about your candidates. If you're a local school district, tell us what you know about your retention process. What was very interesting was because that partnership wasn't already in place, there wasn't any one place that they could go to that someone could automatically say, there is the progression of candidates from entry into preparation program that we have been able to track all the way to retention in our classrooms 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. And so this is where the magic really happens. It happens with these groups. We leverage the work that's being done in other places. And so, yes, we are a CEEDAR state. We have been a CEEDAR state for a number of years, and it has really given us the opportunity, even before having this conversation, to have a process to ensure that we have an aligned professional learning system, whether it's for pre-service teachers or in-service teachers. And what we recognize as a part of this really came back to making sure that teachers are prepared. And so it was really dealing with that tough topic of how long would you stay in an environment that you felt underprepared for? And how fair is it to a classroom teacher who has just spent 4 to 5 years of your life in a classroom studying to go into a local school district to have that district say you are underprepared or what you learned in the classroom is not how we do it in this particular classroom. So that aligned professional learning system is critical. The other reason why this partnership has been very inspirational is because when we look at the research that CEC has done, what we recognize is that teachers feel better supported when they're in the right climate with inclusive leadership. So that's just another example of a partnership that we have been able to leverage. And then also we did some partnering with USAID, but now it's beyond a summit. It is the way we do business in Georgia. Just as recently as within the past week, Governor Kemp has been able to share initiatives to address the teacher pipeline, which is being dealt with from the legislative stance. And so we're talking about short-term strategies, such as how can we recruit retired educators. We're also talking about short-term strategies, such as how can we better compensate teachers who are in the classroom. And we're also talking about long-term strategies, such as how can we create career pathways by which we can make sure that we're attracting teachers appropriately from the beginning. So it has definitely evolved from being a summit to a way of work. And of course, the initiatives at the department have dovetailed into the exact kind of work that Governor Kemp has spoken.
We have to make sure that we are grounding our decisions in the data, the root causes, and the local context. So what I'm going to do is talk about a few different ways that the toolkit can help support that process, from examining data, taking a look at where those gaps start in your teacher pipeline, and then really getting behind the why. What's the why behind our shortages? Why are we seeing shortages in this particular part of the pipeline? What are the root causes behind the issues that we're facing in our state? And again, that focus on local context and the idea that shortages are first and foremost a local issue. So what I'm going to do is go through a preview of 2 portions of the toolkit that can help facilitate this process. And then I'll switch and actually share my screen and go on to the GTL Center website and show you what these look like on the GTL website. So the first is around the idea of examining data pertaining to special education teacher shortages. We have a specific data tool that we developed that goes with our toolkit that we can use within our teams to identify and visualize shortages across the career continuum. And what this tool is intended to do is give teams a starting point for that discussion. How does our pipeline look and how does it change as we move from attracting to preparing to retaining teachers? What state teams can do is bring together partners, so state partners, local districts, educator preparation programs, anyone who's a part of that attract, prepare, retain career continuum, and really take a look at the data and see the picture that it's telling us. The data tool can show us the development of gaps across the career continuum. Essentially, it provides a way for us to compare the attrition of special education teachers with the attrition of the overall teacher population. So this way we can see, are we losing special education teachers at a different rate than we are losing teachers from the overall population? Across the career continuum, where are we losing our special education teachers compared to the rest of the teacher population? Another way to take a look at that same data and get a visualization on it is to focus on the career continuum just for special education teachers and identify those most significant moments of attrition. So where in our pipeline are we unfortunately losing special education teachers? Are we having a problem even just attracting them, trying to get them into our state or district? Are we losing them somewhere in the preparation process? Are they not finishing programs? Are they perhaps not passing state licensure exams? Or is it an issue of retention? Are we losing teachers at the 1 or 2 or even 5-year mark? So this is yet another way that the data tool can help us visualize and take a look at that data. And finally, we can take a look at the attrition in comparison to accountability score results. So taking a look at how special education teacher attrition varies across schools and districts based on how their outcomes for students with disabilities are as measured by their ESSA accountability scores. So essentially comparing high-performing and low-performing districts or localities as measured by their ESSA accountability scores for students with disabilities and seeing if the attrition of special education teachers varies between those schools. Are we losing special education teachers at an appreciably different rate in our higher needs schools? And if so, that might suggest a starting point for a conversation for the team about what we can do to address this. I'll give you just a brief example of what the output might look like, particularly from that first lens, the development of gaps lens. What we have put together in the data tool is an Excel file that is intended to be practitioner friendly. So even if you are not a data guru, it's intended to be nice and user friendly so that you can put some data in, and in return, you will get a visualization output that helps you start your conversation. For the development of gaps, again, comparing the percentage of all teachers retained to a percentage of special education teachers retained, this is the kind of visual that Excel file will return to you. So here you can see in this example, we have percentage of teachers being retained in the gold color and the percentage of special education teachers being retained in the red color. And across the bottom, you can see our different points along the career continuum, starting with applying to a preparation program, to being admitted or even enrolled or getting your education degree conferred, to that point when you are transitioning to in-service, passing your licensure exams, becoming certified, and then how you progress through the district hiring pipeline, from submitting your applications to getting your interview to being hired, and then eventually on, once you are in the classroom, to being retained at that 1, 3, and 5 year mark. We can see that there is a difference in how special education teachers are being retained compared to the overall population of teachers. And we can see that we are losing, in this example, special education teachers at a greater rate at that point between an education degree being conferred and passing the state licensure test. And then we see another big drop off in attrition for special education teachers from the 1 to 3 to 5 year retention point. What we're intending to do with this data tool is spark some conversation about the points along the career continuum where this attrition might be occurring, and then really diving into the root causes behind why we're seeing what we're seeing in this data. Having a data tool is very nice. It puts out a visualization that I think will help spark some good conversations across teams, but then the real conversation that has to be had is what's next. Once we have a sense of what our data is telling us and we have a sense of the root causes behind it, what do we do from there? And from there, we have a selection tool that is a part of our toolkit, and its purpose is to help teams identify, select, implement, and continuously improve educator talent management strategies that address those specific root causes of shortages. So this is, again, where this local context is so important. We want to make sure that whatever strategies we're selecting to address a shortage are targeted to the actual root causes that we're seeing. This is for our SEA and LEA leaders, policymakers, ed prep providers, practitioners, anyone who is involved in that conversation around how we are generating solutions and strategies that address the local context to mitigate special education teacher shortages. So at this point, I have previewed the data tool and the selection tool. I'm actually going to show you what they look like on the website. Again, this is at gtlcenter.org. I've already gone to the toolkit. If you scroll down, you can see that same anchor graphic where you can select the various pieces of the tool. If you were to click on the data tool, it takes you to a page where we have a facilitation guide just for the data tool. If you're looking for a little support in how to use that Excel-based document, this is where you would go. And then we also have our Excel-based workbook that will guide you through how you can input your shortage data and get those nice visualizations that you can use as a starting point for data-rich conversation with your team. I'm going to spend a little bit more time, though, talking about the shortage strategy selection tool. What this tool is intended to do is, again, once you have a sense of your data and the root causes behind your shortage, this is intending to provide you with information to help you implement really targeted strategies. And what we have done is organize this tool again across those themes of attract, prepare, and retain. And what it's going to do is provide you with resources and programs and information that help you implement these strategies in research-based ways. So this tool underneath each of these categories is broken down into categories and even from their subcategories. So under attracting people to the profession, we have pathways into the profession and recruitment, selection, and hiring. If I were to expand this out underneath pathways to the profession, we have sub-strategies like grow your own programs or alternative routes to certification. And under recruitment, selection, and hiring, you can see a whole lot of strategies that we can potentially implement to help with recruitment, selection, and hiring, such as credential reciprocity, financial incentives, diversifying the workforce, etc. Each of these categories has sub-strategies underneath it that you can explore. So let's say that they looked at their data, they examined their root causes and said, we're really struggling with retaining teachers, particularly early career teachers, and we think mentoring induction is going to be the strategy that addresses that. Now we need some support and some resources around how to actually implement mentoring induction in an evidence-based way. You can click here in the sorted strategy selection tool on your desired strategy. And it will take you to a page where you can take a look at different types of resources that the GTL and CEEDAR centers have collected to that particular strategy. So you can organize these by product types. We have briefs, modules, program exemplars, and what these are resources that are targeted to that strategy. So in this example, mentoring and induction. And it provides examples of high quality induction programs that are out there that you can click on to learn more and potentially see if you can make connections with colleagues in other states, or if you can use existing materials that those groups might have. It's really intended to be a one-stop shop for any resources that you need to learn more about the evidence base behind these strategies or get really deeply into implementation. There is one last thing I will highlight, and that is that I know a lot of us are in positions where we say, in a perfect world, I would implement all the strategies in the world at once, but funding is my limitation. If that is the case, we do have a set of strategy funding guides that talk about potential sources of funding with a particular emphasis on federal sources of funding that can be used to fund some of these particular strategies. So if you click on any of these role guides, they are organized in the same way that the strategy selection tool is. It provides roles for the state education agency, the educator preparation program, and the local district. In the funding guide, it's the same thing. It's organized by, again, that attract, prepare, retain, and it talks about your different funding sources. So if funding is something that you are interested in, highly recommend that you look here.